Hello, Michael. Welcome to AI Unscripted Podcast. Who are you and what do you do?
I'm Michael Magán, and I have just been building stuff for the last few months. Over nights and weekends, which is how I guess we kind of came to know each other. I made this dog sleeping quilt or dog sleeping blanket. It was called Pup Packing, and I made it for my dog. And I actually got into like the final 32 with that. I didn't win, but that was pretty fun. I realized that I thought I wanted to get out of software, so I tried to do a physical product. And then I realized there's a reason that I've been in software for 10 years. And so I came back to it, and I was looking for an idea. And so a friend of mine's wife actually is a pretty big recipe influencer. And we were talking about this product called ManyChats. There's like a few Instagram automation apps and some of the challenges she was having with it. And so me and him, like at least at the start, started building something for that to solve her particular problem. And so I worked on that I got into SF2. And so I worked on that while I was in SF2. And then I'm still working on that. But in the last week, I decided just to take a break and work on something that got me really excited, which was this murder mystery app, which is I'm starting to launch a little bit this week, doing some demos of the progress I'm making. But yeah, hoping to have something usable by the end of the week.
Oh, that's great. So I actually didn't know that you had a physical product. You said dog sleeping bag. Like, what was it like about, and what was the inspiration? I guess.
Yeah, great question. So I actually had made it I'd thought about it for years, and I had made it like a prototype of it, maybe like a year and a half before, and I just never had time to spend it. Like I didn't have time to spend working on it, so I started Buildspace. Actually, a friend of mine and I were thinking about working on a project together. And after Farz's first talk, I was like, you know what? I'm just like really excited about this dog quilt for some reason. So I'm going to make it. And so basically the problem it's trying to solve is taking your dog backpacking, right? Like a lot of the time they don't need very much if it's pretty warm, but then if it gets cold, most dogs are like humans. They've been bred to live in somewhat more comfortable environments, / they live in a house all the time. So they haven't like developed that, let's say metabolism, for example, to like handle really cold weather. And the alternatives on the market are these like big, fairly heavy and bulky sleeping bags. And I actually sleep with what they call like a sleeping quilt, not a sleeping bag. And so it's like ultralight material, and it's like a blanket versus like a sleeping bag. And so you save a lot on like weight and size because of that. And I thought for a dog, it actually makes even more sense because sleeping bags, like dogs don't really understand sleeping bags. They don't sleep the same way humans do. So like a quilt that went over the dog, like a jacket, like a loose fitting jacket that kind of drapes over them like a blanket with some straps to keep it in place. Was actually like a better, like more functional for a dog, and just like insanely smaller and lighter, like literally 1/4 the size. And I think it was like about 1/4 the weight of like the most popular competitor, which is like the Roughwear sleeping bag. So, yeah.
Interesting. And do you have like a prototype? Like, can we see it somewhere?
I do. Yeah. Well, I could.
That'd be cool because I can link it, not right now, but if you can, if you have like a shoving product.
I had a website. I actually like shut it down, and I delivered a few of them. Okay. So I sold like $500 worth, and I delivered a few, and then I refunded the rest because I just didn't want to deal with it. I was like the effort to make them all was like too much. So I decided it's one of those. It's like honestly a good example of like. A lot of people early on said, oh, you should, if you're going to do this, like you should get a sewing machine. You should learn how to sew it yourself. And I was like, I just don't really, like, that's not that exciting to me. So in retrospect, I think what would have made it better is if I had like a co-founder who like loved like sewing and making stuff and also like believed in the product. But for somebody like me who was like, I just liked the idea of it and I wanted to like make it exist in the world. and it was just different. And also I think it was for me, like once you've kind of like figured out the quirks, so I did make a few prototypes. I paid someone to help me like make it. I realized like once you have like kind of a finished product, there's like not a lot of product development for a long time. And so that wasn't really like my thing, which is like, I like the building, the making new things, the like iterating.
You like the process.
I do, yeah. It's probably why I like software so much, because it's just like constant product development. You never really stop, right? You have to like filter in marketing and sales in between. So that's like a better cadence for me. Like I like marketing and sales, but I just couldn't do it all day, every day. That would be not as fun for me as getting to build as well.
Okay. Well, hopefully you can send us some pictures so I can link it in the description, because I'm curious what it looked like, because that's wild. People come like from software background, they totally do like different thing, like I mentioned, the other guy.
Kat similar. She was in SF2 with me. So I actually didn't realize this until I'd met her before, but she has like a software background. She even like did a software startup and then decided to do music. So she's got a similar kind of like music's her passion. So she did that instead. So
it's a wild pivot.
Yeah. She's loving it though. And I think she's doing great. Pivot. So good for her. Like,
oh, that's great. Kate, is it Maeve?
Yeah.
Her like or is it different?
Maeve.
Maeve.
Maeve is her like
her handle
that's
on
her
Spotify.
Like, music or artist name, I guess. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I know her because I remember I met her through the Nights and Weekends, and I really liked her song. And I got her 2 songs playing on my Spotify.
That's awesome
list. So that's pretty cool. Okay, let's go back to the LinkinChat. So I've looked at it. I'm really like the use case for it. It's pretty convenient that you can do it just by just putting descriptions in your, I believe, comment section, and it interprets what you like the workflow. So but for general audience, what is it and who is it for?
Yeah, so the app's called LinkinChat. The domain is similar. It's like get LinkinChat. We basically were like, let's just build something with like a very specific use case. So it's really obvious like what you're getting out of it. And so there's these platforms, or let me take a step back. So like if you're an influencer and most influencers, like they're not making money, or let's say not influencers, most creators, let's say, because creators kind of, it's like a little bit of a distinction. But so creators on Instagram, none of them make money from posting on Instagram, right? If they do make money from posting, it's because a brand has decided it's like, it's like worth just having this person post about it. But the ultimate goal, right, is that you get somebody off of Instagram or whatever platform you're on to wherever the thing that like people pay for, which is usually like products, or like a website that serves ads, things like that. And so the first person who kind of inspired this, she was a recipe creator. And so she would post these reels and images of new recipes she's created. And then she would make first of all, there's a limited amount of space you can put. I mean, you can put a bunch of stuff in the captions. They're kind of hard to use that information. So she also wanted to be able to send people to her recipe site so they get the full recipe. But then the other benefit for her, right, is it's her recipe site. She has ads on her recipe site, so she makes money from ads. And then she also sells books and other things through her site. And so once people get from her post to her recipe on her recipe site, that's when she can start to monetize that engagement that she got from Instagram. And so a lot of people are trying to find different ways to get people from their posts to their page. So link in bio is the default option, but there's a lot of challenges with link in bio. Like when people are scrolling, they don't want to leave scrolling, go to this link, get the recipe. A lot of times when you're scrolling on Instagram, you're not looking for groceries or cooking. So you need to like there's no reason to go right then and there, and so a lot of people forget. And so what a lot of people were doing was they're starting to do the like comment for, and they'll send like a message with like a link. And so Richard had started doing that with a different platform called ManyChats, and there's a few other ones as well. And they're like fairly easy to use. They're like no code workflowing software that lets you like set up automations. So when somebody comments a code, you can send them a message. But for people, especially like Richa, where every single post is a unique recipe link, or like if you were reviewing products, for example, every post is a unique product. Or if you're like a company with a lot of different products, every post is a unique product often. So be able to send people like directly to that particular recipe or product that you just posted about. You'd have to go in, and every time you post, you have to set up this workflow, and it takes like, probably a few minutes each time. And if you're like, you post twice a day and you have a lot of other things you want to do, the goal of my app was just, hey, could we get the instructions, the workflow instructions just from your caption? Because basically we can get everything from that. So, hey, what code do they want you to comment? And then if they just include the link, we can extract the link as well. And then when someone comments the code, we just send them the link from the caption. And one more thing to point out, because a lot of people ask this, they're like, well, why don't, if the link's in the caption, isn't that good enough? And it's like, well, you can't click that link, and you also can't like copy and paste it out.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
So like and this is intentional, like Instagram doesn't want people to do that. But what's really interesting is,
yeah, they don't want you to leave the website. Yeah.
But what's interesting is this, I'm using an API from Instagram, and this is like a whole like API, like a special API they created to be able to message people who comment on your posts. So I think for Instagram, they actually kind of like this because it gives them some signal that people are interested in like whatever this person's posting, even if it is just like a code. And then also it doesn't like disrupt that flow of like scrolling, because you can comment, get the code, see that you got the message, and then keep scrolling. And one thing that I found from people who use this is that, or the users on the other end, the people who are commenting, especially these recipe creators, a lot of times they'll like get like, they'll comment for like a bunch of different recipes over time, right? And it almost seems like their message history with that creator is like their saved links of like recipes they like from that person. It's really crazy because like like you can like, I can like see like people who have like commented like 20 times over like weeks for like the same person. It's like, oh, this one's cool. Oh, I like that one too. But yeah, so it's pretty cool. It's been fun to do. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great description. So if I understand correctly, it is very minimal setup. You only connect your Instagram account to LinkinChat, and then in description you put the in the quotes you put the trigger word, and then you put the website you want to go, and it will automatically do it. So you don't need to go back and forth. You just set up everything when you post. When you make a post. And can you do, if for example I have a post existing and I go back, change the description and set it up, and will it work again? And if I have like, okay, and will it still work if on that post I'll have like a bunch of other stuff, like like people do tags, people do a long like blog description? If on top I'll set it up, will it still work, or will there be issues? Do you need to have a clean?
No, I've seen people write like really long captions, put lots of hashtags. So the way that it works, so a lot of people are like, why aren't you just using like regex or something, which is just a really common software way to like look for strings, but it's like it's deterministic, right? So the reason we didn't, so actually we're using an AI prompt, is that the prompt has a bunch of stuff in it to like help it not make mistakes. So it'll say like, hey, anything that starts with hashtag is definitely not the code word. Anything with an at, like, so like it does stuff like that to like try and really like make sure that it gets the right information. Then it has a bunch of examples in it as well. That it uses to like figure out a lot of cases. So there are some cases it can't handle, but the way I explain it to a lot of creators is like, if it's pretty clear to a human, like what what you want them to do and what the link is, it's pretty clear to this app. If you do if you make it really subtle, then yeah, like it might miss it. But that's the same for like the way to think about it's like a person. If you made it a really subtle and it's like, is this the code word or is this the code word? Like if it was unclear to a person, then it's probably unclear to the AI that we're using. So I just tell them like, hey, just try and be really explicit. And and it's really interesting because you'll find like we actually it also generates like misspellings that it'll try and solve for. So if something like misspells the trigger word, it'll automatically like generate those. But it's interesting that like some people were doing like multi-word code words, and a lot of people are like not like only doing like half the code words. And I was like, yeah, maybe like single words are better. But one of the features we're planning to add for the premium tier is even just like sentiment analysis. So it'd be like, hey, if it appears like somebody's asking for the recipe link and there is a link, send it. So it doesn't have to be a trigger word anymore.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, that's cool. So you can just like, hey, can I get a link? And it will understand and send you a link automatically. Yep. Wow.
Yeah. We haven't built that yet. There's some stuff we need to like handle because there's some like risks with that we want to make, because we want to make it feel like it should just be like it works every time. And so we haven't figured out how to make it just work like consistently enough that we want to release it. Yeah.
Okay. And question specifically for this, for the SF2, why did you decide to build LinkinChat and like maybe something else instead? What was like the main prompt for this?
I think it was, I definitely knew I wanted to do something in software. I think what made me start it, so I kind of started before SF2, was that I had a couple friends that were involved and interested. So it was like just fun to start working with people again. I'd been working on my own for quite a few months. I think the biggest thing for me was having a few people that were like excited about doing this. And then during SF2, honestly, there's things about the product that I like. So one is it's like really clear what it is. Like it's not complicated. The influencers who use it are like, yeah, I get it. Yeah. I understand why this is like a problem and why it's annoying. And the other reason I liked it was it had this kind of product-led growth opportunity. And I feel like for a small creator who, I don't have a bunch of VC money to spend on marketing, having that freemium model where people can so like one of the interesting things about my product is it's got like an extremely generous free tier, which is you can basically use it for free as long as you want with as many messages as you want, as long as you tag us. And so there's a few creators doing that. And then, but it's interesting, like most people have upgraded probably because the price is too low. Like I need to raise it. But yeah, I think as I raise it, that product-led growth, like the people not willing to pay the premium price will help kind of drive adoption. So yeah.
It's a great problem to have.
Yeah. I thought that was kind of funny really early on. I was like, dang, like too many people are paying for it. Like I need less people to pay for it so that they market it for me. But yeah, it's like just on my to-do list, my laundry list of to-do list things to do.
Yeah. And it's also a pretty cool way to like get organic, growth, organic marketing, because people just do it for you because the product is so easy to use, and you only have to tag your app and you can use it for free.
Exactly.
It's pretty neat. I would say marketing trick.
Yeah, I really like products that have that kind of stuff built into it because, marketing is one of the hardest parts of any product. And I think most people don't realize that. They think like building it is hard. And I'm like, no, building is like the easier part in general. Getting people to want to use whatever you're doing. And actually, I think marketing in general is the hard for everything. Like, people think like making the podcast is hard. And it's like, no, that's like probably the easy part. Getting people to listen to your podcast is the hard part.
Yeah.
And that's like always the biggest challenge. So like anything you can do that has like built-in marketing for you, the better, right? So, yeah.
That's pretty cool. So, and I'm curious for this specific app. Like you said that your main customers, I believe, the like a recipe or restaurants owners or something like that. Do you have any other like? What do you see? Who are the like? What are the biggest use cases so
Yeah,
far?
I mean the original, like, let's say ICP, like ideal like customer for the product was this like recipe creator, because they tend to post a lot, right? They post recipes, like often daily. Like our biggest user, she posts twice a day, like 7 days a week. So she posts a lot. And so that, like, the more often you post, the more like annoying it is to do this. Um, the other kind of people we've been thinking about, so yeah, like I already mentioned, reviewers, so like people who review products on Instagram is another really potentially good use case, because usually every post is a unique product. And then and we actually have like already one person who's doing something like that. So the vegan tech nomad, she like found me through I think the SF2 SF2 Buildspace videos, and she's like basically this creator, kind of influencer creator, and then certain people pay her to basically like talk about her products, make posts about their products. So that's another really good example. So influencers, especially influencers who want to be able to like have like evidence around how much like traffic they're driving, because they can put like a unique link in that tags like that they sent it. And so it really helps them with kind of showing the value they're generating for their customers, versus like, I think link in bio is tough, because like, if you do a lot of these, you have a really long, especially I think the biggest challenge is like, if you only have like one link in bio is like probably okay for you in lots of cases. Another really interesting example was somebody like trying to get people to sign up for their email list. So they would give away like freebies to people who commented the code, and they'd get a link to like put in their email, and then they get this like PDF with like their like diet thing or whatever it is. And then that particular influencer, for example, she was kind of gathering emails and people on her list because she was launching a course. So like courses might be another interesting angle. But yeah, I mean, honestly, it's like anybody who's trying to get somebody from Instagram to somewhere else, it's probably useful. Just especially useful for people who are posting a variety of things. So yeah.
Yeah, that's neat. That's neat. I wanna try it myself. Because I was looking at it and thinking like, oh, it would be cool to like whenever I do posts on Instagram, like the little shorts. I think I can do the same. It'll probably because shorts is similar to posts, right? Or is it only
Posts and reels? Yeah.
for the post? Yeah. Okay. So I can do that and just post to this to YouTube channel, right? To the whole thing, because that's what I was like. I was like looking, okay, how can I get people to actually watch this?
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, I'm nobody on YouTube, so okay, how we can get people, inside and just like
I think podcast is a great example, right? Because like especially if you're, you start like recycling old reels, like it'd be really cool, especially, I mean, obviously when you have like a new podcast, you want people to send them to it as well. But I think it's especially cool when you have like, let's say a library of like past podcasts that you're repurposing to like continue to generate content, to be able to like link back to like each individual podcast, I think is really cool. Yeah. So I think it's like that. I think podcast was actually I think I tried to reach out to some podcasters. I haven't found one yet. So I'd love to get you trying it and see if it works for you. So.
Okay, I'll give it a shot. Yeah, I have I think in Opus Clips you can edit description. So I think if I can just like put there and schedule it and see how it works and see if it if it gets the workflow.
You just mentioned another use case. So like a lot of people stopped using schedulers because they'd have to like whenever they posted, they have to go and set up the workflow. And so what's great about LinkinChat is that you can go back to using your scheduler of choice because you just put it in the caption. And so it's like, what's nice. So that's another thing. Like everyone's like, oh, well, setting up a ManyChat automation, that's not that hard. I'm like, yeah, it's not super hard, but like you have to, every time you post, you have to like post and then go do it. Whereas what's cool about LinkinChat is you could schedule it to launch, like, come out at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning or whatever, or like 2 a.m. in the night, or like whenever you wanted, and it would automatically just like work. So
Sweet. Yeah.
Yeah, or schedule out a week
Yeah,
worth
I'll
of
give it a
posts,
try.
and you don't have to like go back and set up ManyChat automation. Or I keep using ManyChat. There's a few other options, but that's like the most common one people know, and they always ask me. They're like, "What's the difference between this and ManyChats?"
Mm-hmm. That's cool. So I wanna ask you a question, like more about working, since you said that it is probably your favorite part is like the process of like building the software. So can you walk me through the highlights of working on it, and then like from the idea, and then also I'm curious about the marketing, since it's like the hard
Yeah.
part as well, maybe the hardest, is to actually get people to use it and notice it. Like, what is the
Yeah.
progression and the evolution?
Yeah. So in terms of like the process, I was a product manager for 10 years, so I had a lot of experience like making products, like maybe the whole like at a high level. I didn't spend as much time like building and writing software as much as I do now. I spend a lot more now, especially with like just me and
Mm-hmm.
most projects that I'm working on. But yeah, process. Man, I feel like it changes all the time. But I would say like just let's say for product development, yeah, key thing is, talking to people who have this problem, right? And trying to understand what those problems are. Like do that at the beginning always. Like it's good to understand what their problems are. But I like to start building like pretty fast and early on, because I feel like, I think once you start, like once the rubber meets the road is when you start to like find all of these like issues. So like, some like in an ideal world, maybe somebody wants X to happen, but as you start building, you're like, oh, that's like way harder than I thought. And so being able to like go back to them and be like, okay, I can't quickly at least do exactly what you described, but like I could do this in like a week, would this be good enough?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd say like my process is normally pretty much like that. It's like talking to people, getting feedback about what they want, picking the things that feel like the most valuable for like the person that they like. So like, if I talk to like 3 people, I usually try and figure out like who seems the most like frustrated by the thing they told me about, or they get the most excited when they talk about it. Cause like, it's one thing when somebody's like, well, I guess you could do this, or like, yeah, it'd be fun if it did that. But like, that's usually, in my opinion, very like low signal. When people go like, wow, like this would really make my life better. Or like I messaged somebody, or I interviewed somebody, and at first they were like, yeah, I'm not so sure about it. And then like 3 days later, they like emailed me back and were like, we talked about this and we really would want this. And so it's like that kind of shift gives me more feedback, right? It's like they thought about it for like 3 or 4 days and then changed their mind enough to like want to send me an email. So just trying to like try and find that, yeah, I don't know, try and like get that signal from customers as an idea. Like I try and build everything. Whenever I build anything, I want to get customers like right away. Even if it's not like 100 customers, like I need to have at least a handful of people who are going to use it. Because A, it's just like not that fun to build stuff that no one's going to use. And B, you just learn a lot from like their experiences that you just can't learn from your own. So like one thing that I've been trying to do more and more is build stuff that like I would love and get excited about, because it's like more fun to build those. But the only challenge with that, I think, is that when you build something, like all the intricacies of how you built it, and like you have all these unconscious things that you like know about it that make it really hard for you to judge, like, is this going to work for somebody else? Because like, I mean, how often do you like when you build something like, well, I know that like if I refresh the page, everything like disappears. So you just never refresh the page or something like that, right? But then like you show it to somebody and they refresh the page and then everything disappears and they're really frustrated. And you're like, okay, well, I should go fix that. But like if you're just using it, you wouldn't know that like that's like people do that, or that might become a problem. So yeah, just like always I always want to have a handful of people who are engaged. Yeah, so like that's like kind of like my process. And then yeah, I try, it depends on what I'm doing. Like sometimes I'll if something that I'm working on is hard, maybe I'll like launch or like talk about it like every week or every few days. If something I'm working on is like easier to build or faster to build, I'll try and like launch and talk to you about it like every day. But I think the key thing is figuring out like what that cycle is for you, depending on what like how challenging the thing is you're working for, and how confident you are that the end result of the thing you're building will be high value for that person. And just make sure that you like have that iteration loop, and it should be, especially in software or anything digital, should be fast, in my opinion, like days, not weeks. But yeah.
Yeah. And did you get like the first customer before you even had like a real product? Were you able to like to find someone, like your like few, like you said, first
Yeah,
people?
so LinkinChat's an interesting one. So yeah, I did a lot of like pre-marketing when we were starting to work on it. So I got a couple people interested before we even started building, and then we built something and I started getting more people interested in it, and then we applied to get like Meta to review our app. And that took 55 days. So like for the first like 25 of those days, yeah, it was crazy. Literally, they have the craziest API review process I've ever seen. It's a mess. It's like probably a whole nother podcast episode of like all the problems that they have. It's pretty bad. And yeah, like a handful of those were like things that there's things in the docs that we should have known. But of the 24 or 25 reviews, I would say 20 of them were like, wait, this is like a Facebook meta problem that we have to like work around, versus like actually like, oh, your product doesn't work or you're not meeting our specification.
Wow, it took 25 reviews to get it approved for the API?
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I posted about it on Reddit, like some of the details. And within like 2 weeks, I had somebody reach out to me that was literally trying to build something fairly similar. And they'd run into like the same types of problems, but they were stuck on like one of the problems that we'd figured out. And they were asking me for like how to solve it. So it's like, at first I was like, maybe it's just us. And then having this second person reach out and be like, no, like we had the exact same experience. It doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, I'm telling you, it's so crazy.
Wow, that's like the most horrible developer onboarding experience I've ever heard. Is like you have to be really persistent to get through 25 reviews to get like the access to
maybe
the API.
I was too persistent on this one, but yeah. So one of the challenges, we actually got a few people interested and excited about it, and actually I would say it actually like lost them because it took so long. I think they like went off to use other soft platforms because they just couldn't wait that long, which is totally understandable. But yeah, the original person, she stuck around, so she joined pretty quick. And then I posted that we had launched, like we'd just gotten through our app review process and we were going to launch. And this family, or I guess actually a friend of mine's mom, like reached out to me and said, I'll try it. And so she's like an influencer creator. And so she was actually like one of the first. This guy from London found us and he started using it. Yeah, so we just got like a few people, mostly from posting on Instagram, like posting reels on Instagram. So that was some of like the initial traffic. Then I guess like kind of shifting into marketing a little bit more. So I started basically posting on Reddit, and that was something that I kind of like I feel like Reddit is like the default place for people to go marketing stuff, and software at least, that or like Hacker News. But I've learned that like it's kind of I think a lot of people, especially myself included, you take like I'm gonna just put my link there and people are gonna like click on the link and it's gonna go like it's gonna just get upvoted, and that's just not really how it works. And I basically learned you have to get people, like it's marketing everywhere. You have to like write a story, get people excited about why they should like check out your thing or like what's different about you. Without sounding too marketing-y. So there's like, I think kind of there's a strategy there that I had to learn. It took me a while. And I feel like now I've kind of learned it. So for this new app I'm working on, I haven't posted yet, but I've like been thinking about like, how would I write this up so that it gets upvoted on Reddit and people actually like it versus just downvote you and say, you're spam or something. So Reddit was a big one. I had a few more people sign up through Reddit, finding it on Reddit. And then for about a couple of weeks, I started doing cold DM emailing. So there's ways you can get like Instagram influencers emails off of their Instagram page. Like they post it publicly. And I think it's mostly for, they want people to email them, to like give them sponsored products and stuff. And so I would email them. And that actually worked pretty well. So we got a fair amount of people coming through that. So but that was even another example. I had like learned like telling the story. So telling the story of, my friend's wife and saying like, hey, she had this problem. Maybe you have this problem as well. I built this app to solve this problem. And that was like I got a much better response rate from that, because it came across more like, hey, I have this like interesting information that I'm trying to give you. And then there's this like story, and you can see yourself in that story. Like, oh, I'm also a recipe creator. I also have this problem. Or, oh, I've actually never considered doing this. And to see that she's doing it and it sent like 15,000 messages in a month, that's pretty exciting. Like, I want to figure out how to do that myself. Yeah. So like trying to create those stories. And I think honestly, the stories get better and better as you get more users, because you can like leverage their stories to like communicate your product. And those are like the best stories, right? So-and-so listened to your podcast and had this great insight and went and did something, like those are like the things that really sell like the product, right? Or like, oh, isn't this really interesting? Like this snippet of the podcast is like really great, right? So I think those are like the best kind of marketing things you can do, like personally. And then obviously the best marketing is referral marketing, right? Where people start to refer your product either just because they like the product, they don't care about making money, they just want to help their friend out. That's the best. And then the second best is, oh, this is a good product. If I tell people about it and they sign up, they'll probably want to use it and they'll probably want to pay for it. And if they pay for it, I make money. Those are the best types of marketing, because they become either your free or paid sales reps for you.
Wow, that's pretty cool. That's actually answered my other question. The marketing, it was pretty interesting. So what my biggest takeaway is that you were able to cold DM people, but it wasn't like a standard cold DM. You were actually trying to relate to them, and you were telling them story about what it is and how you like and how it relates to them. I'm curious. I would be curious to see like some of the examples. Maybe if you have any time, maybe put a blog post. Yeah. That would be pretty cool to see, because it sounds it was very effective. So and I would like to use it for some of my products whenever I get back to building.
Yeah. Actually,
cool. Because that's the biggest problem I had, is like getting people interested, like actually to care and like click and check it out. So
actually, I'm happy to share what I've done, but honestly, where I really learned this from was so like in SF2, they had some of these presentations, or I don't know if they call them what they want to call them, but they always have special words for these things. But basically, they gave talks about different aspects of building and a lot of things about marketing. And Jeffrey has a really good talk on there about writing. And I would say like that's like the best, like I would go watch that versus like read what I did. That's a lot of what Jeffrey talks about in that talk, or literally just him helping me write some stuff that I've posted or sent in emails. Yeah, it's great. I think, like if you put anything in like in the bio, like that's like for writing, it's really good. And yeah, it definitely made me rethink how I approach like communicating. I mean, I kind of always try to like tell stories, but I didn't think about like how important like the type of story you're telling and how you present it and how you kind of pull them in. And then also just how it comes across. Like you really, like one thing that I heard from, I don't remember where I heard it. It feels like apocryphal at this point from Buildspace writing, but they're like, never start with a question like, do you have this problem? Because it just sounds so marketing. Like it just like immediately people's like marketing like radar comes up. And so now I like never start things like that. I just say like, I just start with the story like, hey, I have this person, or like there's this creator named, what's her name, like, and I just like go right into it. And then maybe like later I have this like, hey, does this sound like something that would affect you, or do you agree? So like questions are fine, but like when you just start with a question right away, especially questions like, do you have this problem, or what do you think? Or something like right away. Like it just makes people go like, oh, they're trying to sell me something.
Yeah.
Yeah, but honestly, I think another big thing, I don't know if it was in that talk that I'm recommending. There might have been another one. I'll have to find it. But one of the things he said, there was this like, was it like a YouTube video or some video that he shared where it started talking about Ronaldo, Cristiano Ronaldo, and like his ability to like, basically it like showed him like scanning the field, and it showed like there were studies where he scans the field before getting a pass like 20% more than like any other players in soccer. And that's like these researchers think that's one of the reasons he's like so good, is because he's like scanning the field better. And he like paused the video and just said like do you like this? And like everybody's like, yeah, this is really interesting, I'm really engaged. And then like right after he unpaused it, they like switched into saying like, okay, so we built this VR app that you can use to like practice this skill to get better at soccer. And then he like paused it again and was like, okay, what do y'all feel now? And it's like, oh, this is like, I really liked this. And I'm like, basically there's a whole marketing video, but the first 50% of the video just felt like really interesting information that made you get into it. And then it changed your whole view about the fact that like, if they just started with like, hey, I built this VR headset that helps you get better at soccer by scanning, like a lot of people in the room who don't play soccer or don't care about this would just probably like tuned out right away. But because they had that intro that got them excited, it's like they now like enjoyed it. They might just send it to a friend that was into soccer, right? And they might send it to like their whole like experience of it is different. Yeah. And so all that to say, like when you're telling a story, like trying to make like, how do you make the story itself like interesting or valuable is like another big thing that I think about. Like I want to make just the post alone have value, or the email or whatever I'm sending have value, and then get them hooked with that story. And then you maybe like put in your pitch, because at that point they're just much more amenable to like whatever you're doing, because they're like, hey, I've already created value for you in my post. Maybe my product or the thing you're selling or building will also create more value for me.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, right? So if I break it down, so on the first part of the video, you will have something not related to your product, but engaging in somewhat related. And then on the other part, you will show this is the solution. This is what we are working on. That's pretty, I like that way of engagement. It's pretty creative.
Yeah. I mean, it was a great video. Like, I mean, I just remember watching it and being like, wow, I'm just so like, I want to know more. I had no idea it was an ad, right? It took me way too long. And I think I've also noticed, like, you see this on YouTube more and more now, where like ads will start and like sometimes you don't even realize it's an ad, because it's like, it feels like it's like another YouTube video. And then you realize like, oh, it's an ad. And some of them do that really poorly, where it's like too fast, right? Maybe because it costs a lot to do this, but it's so fast that you're like, oh, this is just, But I mean, I think you also see this just on like Twitter and YouTube, like people posting about, new product launches, right? Like these go viral, not because they're paying for it, but because they're giving you like useful information. Like a lot of people are curious, like, hey, I want to have an AI assistant that can go with me anywhere. And so when somebody says, hey, we built an AI assistant and then here's this like cool looking red box, a lot of people are going to be like, I'm just going to watch because I'm curious. So that's an example where like, you're just building something that's a lot of hype around it and excitement and interest, so you don't need to do much. But if you're building something that doesn't have a lot of hype and excitement around it, you have to figure out how to like generate that hype and excitement in your content. And I would argue Instagram automation is something you have to create the hype and excitement yourself. It's not just like inherent to the product as is, for example.
Great. So let's talk about some of other your projects. Now you turn around completely 180 degrees, and you're building a murder mystery app, which is totally different from previous. So why and what is it about, and what's up with that?
Yeah, great question. So I mean, the truth of it is, I was my wife was visiting me while I was in SF. and I don't even know how it came up, but she was like, I feel like an AI generated murder, like, so let me talk about like what a murder mystery is, or like a murder mystery party is. So what it is basically you invite a bunch of friends over and everybody gets a character for the night. And so it's kind of role playing to some extent. But then what happens is someone gets murdered, and then everybody, it's like asymmetric information type of thing. Everybody has different information. One person's the murderer. And then now as a group in your character, you're trying to discover who the murderer is before the end of the night. And then if you get it right, then you win and you discover the murderer. Or if you get it wrong, or you don't figure it out, then the murderer gets away or whatever. And so she was just saying like, oh, I feel like you could make a really good AI generated one. I was like, oh, and we started talking about it. And I was trying to get her to build it, but she's just too busy. So I was like, well, I'll go ahead and build it. And because I got excited about it. I actually haven't played a murder mystery, like done that, but I played there's a lot of like board games that are similar. Probably my favorite board game, like Avalon, is really similar. It's a, I think they call them, I forgot the name of this game, but they're basically like, it's like a fancy word for lying games where you have to like lie or deception games. They're called deception games. And I love deception games. I love games where you're trying to like figure out stuff. And I started looking into like how do people set up murder mysteries? So there's a few options today. So one is you just make one yourself. You like manually design it, come up each piece yourself. You maybe look at a guide of how the people have done it. And then there's a bunch of people who sell kits online. So you can like, some of them are like printable. Some of them have been around for a long time. But there's really like nobody who's figured out how to like make an AI generated one as far as I can tell. And I thought there's some really cool advantages of like AI to generate these types of things. So one, different way, like different types you can make gets expanded, right? So if you go to a kit website, there's like maybe the best ones have like 15 different kits you can buy. So kits being like different types of murder mysteries with different, and then maybe within each kit, they have like a handful of different like sizes and, adult themed or child friendly, those kinds of things. But with AI, it's basically infinite. Like you could have a Star Wars themed one on the moon or something, or a Disney, like you could pick your favorite Disney movie and have it generate a murder mystery for your favorite Disney movie with all the characters from that movie, for example. And so like the types of things you can create just get a lot better and easier. The barrier to entry, like the barrier to creating one of these goes from like buying a kit to spending hours developing it yourself to like probably mere minutes. So that's like pretty exciting to me. And then the other thing I really like about it is one of the things I wouldn't like about hosting a murder mystery is that almost all of them are set up where somebody has to be the kind of game master, right? Where they like know who the murderer is and they have to like give out clues and do all that kind of stuff. And so they can't actually play. And I love the idea of like the AI being able to be the game master, right? And so like if I hosted it, I could just be like anyone else, be like a guest, and I don't know who the murderer is. And then I also like having it be on the phone because it makes it like simpler. Like I don't have a printer, so I can't print things out. So having it phone based would be really nice. And it feels like there's actually not a lot of competition in that space, like phone based murder mystery. There's not very many of those. So there's a lot of things that I like about it. And then just like on a completely personal matter, I have the one thing I do not like about LinkinChat is how much I've had to like work with like Meta's systems. Like not only was the review process really painful, but they've like recently in the last few weeks have had all these like bugs and it's like affecting people like on my app. And all of it it'll say is like, I'm sorry, it's just like it's Meta and it's happening to everybody on every automation platform. And that just doesn't feel very good versus like, I feel like if I have, OpenAI has its issues, but they seem to be at least trying to make the product better. Whereas I don't get the same feeling. Sorry, I don't mean to like hate on Instagram or Meta's APIs, but I don't get the feeling that they're trying to make
hate on Zuck.
I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people trying to do their best, but I don't think it's a priority for them. It doesn't feel like it's a priority. I'll say that at least. And yeah, so I have some like it's not as fun to work on. Not even just because like the product is, I mean, murder mystery sounds like a lot of fun to work on comparatively, but also it's been a rough few weeks, and I was like, I just need a break and work on something else. So part of it is this is a break for me. And all that to say is like, yeah, I think what I'm realizing more and more as I talk to people in this space is that, almost most of them have built like 3 or 4 products before they figure something out that they both love and works well for a lot of people. And so being flexible and willing to like try out other things is like a big part of success in this space. And one of the big focuses I've gained over the last few months is this concept I've been taught or told that I just really resonates with me, is that your financial runway will usually outstrip your emotional runway. And I think a lot of startup founders are like really focused on like the finance and success of everything. Like, oh, I need to like get more customers. We have to get more MRR. We need to go like, we need to have like so much runway in the bank and go raise money. And like they're really focused on those elements, which are important. I mean, you need them. Like you can't work on stuff if you can't eat. But what I think they often like minimize is like how much of this is, it's like a marathon. Almost very few founders have like their first idea hit and within a few months or even within the first year. And so recognizing that anything you can do that increases your ability to like last emotionally is like really valuable. And so, a lot of people like the best advice is like, hey, you want to have people around you who are having the same, like doing the same kinds of stuff because they keep you going. Co-founders is really helpful. But I think for me, I'm realizing also the stuff you're working on, right? If you're not excited about it, it's also like harder to stay motivated. And so for me, like the murder mystery, I think it's a good idea. I think there's a huge opportunity here, but I also like am just enjoying building it. And so I'm just going to spend like a week or 2 trying to like see how far I get, and then I can reevaluate. LinkinChat's still there. It's still working. If there's a bug, I'll stop and fix it. People who are using it like it.
I'll check it out.
So, who knows? Maybe in a few weeks I'll come back to it. There'll be more customers, more people. I'll have like some idea I want to work on will come back, and I just like really want to get going. And so I think that's kind of where I'm right now. Just trying to be more flexible with myself and figure out what I'm excited about doing for the next 3 to 4 months, maybe a year. Who knows?
That's pretty cool. So murder mystery is, it seems like similar to like Among Us, but because it's online, I assume will be, but you will have a lot of like different scenarios, right? And you have AI managing everyone.
Yeah.
Like the whole navigation.
I would say murder mysteries are like, it's somewhere in between like Dungeons and Dragons and Among Us, right? Or like a game like Among Us. So it's like, it's a little bit more on the kind of creative, like less structured side, right? Like Among Us is a very structured, I mean, the games that I was talking about, like Avalon, Coup, all of those are very structured games. You're not playing a character. You maybe have a role, but you're just playing yourself as that role. Murder mysteries tend to be a little bit more like D&D in that like you take on like a different character. You're supposed to like behave like that person. You have like you have like so for example, one of the things that I'm working on generating is having like every person have like a relationship. So it's like let's say I'm playing like Dr. John Mason or something, and like there's another character who maybe is my friend, but actually in this game they're my wife or something like that, and so like we have to like act in the game like she's my wife or whatever, and so like maybe I'm protecting her. Like I don't know if she's the murderer or not, but like my objective in the game is to like make sure she doesn't get accused of being the murderer, right? Because like that's what my character would do in real life, for example, or like try and not incriminate her because it would make people think she's or incriminate her because of the fact that like she's my wife, and so I don't think she did it or whatever. Yeah. So it's like that's I say like the major differences, and that's why I think AI is like super useful and interesting, because AI can kind of create these like really custom creative experiences. Like ideally when you use this app, like every time you do it, it'll be like completely different. It'll have similar structures, right? Like there's always going to be a murderer, there's always going to be a victim, there's always going to be like certain aspects, but like the character you play and their objectives and motivations will be pretty unique every time you play.
Oh, that's cool. So on that note, I want to ask you this question about AI. What is your favorite AI tool so far? I assume that you've been deep in the AI world since you're working with it.
I mean,
so what is your so far?
Cursor for sure. I mean, there's nothing I use more than Cursor now. Have you used Cursor?
Wow. I've seen it. You actually the second person who mentioned it, because I looked at it and then I saw that you need to download it. As I'm like, oh, I have all this, stuff that I saved, the plugins in VS Code. So I was like, I'll just stay with it. But then I think Abel told me that you can download all the plugins.
Yeah. I think you could even just like migrate your VS settings, like. You have your like VS setting for your user, you just like copy it and it'll be identical. It's all Cursor is perfect. It's VS Code with like it's like a layer on top of VS Code so that it can do certain things that an extension wouldn't be able to do. But the underlying,
like a wrapper.
It's basically a wrapper. Yeah. I kind of wish I'd started using it earlier, and like I used it for a while, and I kind of like use it haphazardly. I tried Copilot. But yeah, Cursor is, at least in my opinion, the best out there, and they seem to be making the most progress at making it better, faster.
Wow. Okay, you're like, now I'm convinced. You're the second person mentioning it, and if it's that good, I'll give it a shot.
Yeah, no,
I haven't tried it yet, but
yeah, Cursor is a game changer. And then I'd say probably my second most use is I just use ChatGPT. I've been a pro member for like a few years now. It's just good. I know there's like all these other apps that I could use where I could put my API keys in and it'd be cheaper, but I feel like the other benefit of paying it is that I feel like I always get early access to everything. So it's like I got to try it out earlier. And there's certain things that ChatGPT is still like really good at. I've tried some other ones. I think, yeah. I mean, there's probably a lot of like apps I'm using now that have like a little bit of AI in it that I like. But yeah, honestly, I feel like my favorite use cases are things that just like extend your abilities, right? And Cursor is just like the perfect example of it for me. I'm an okay coder. I didn't know a lot of JavaScript, and it just like made it so that I could build entirely JavaScript apps. And so, yeah.
Wow. So you built all of that using Cursor? Like all of the LinkinChat and
lots of Cursor users. I mean, I want to be like clear, like you have to like know what you're doing. Cursor's not good enough yet to just say like, hey, make an app and do XYZ. But it's really good at handling a lot of the just like tedious parts of coding where you're like, oh, this type is mismatched, or like this thing, you have this problem. Like, honestly, most of the debugging is just AI. Like I'll just see some, linting error, say AI fix this, and 95% of the time it can do it. And then there's like 5% where I have to figure it out myself. But yeah, it just is really great. It's also really good for, I've used it a lot where like if I've already written something myself, and then I want to do something really similar again somewhere else, I'll just like copy the example that I wrote and then just like copy the text I want to apply it to, or wherever I want to apply something similar, and just say, hey, like given this example, like redo it with like these new fields. And it's just really good at like that kind of stuff, like the stuff that you're like, oh gosh, I have to like do another thing that looks a lot like this thing, but it's like I just want to put different data in it and have it be like 3 versus 1 or something, and it's just like it'll just do that stuff like take the variable, map it, like it just does all that stuff that I could write it, but it's just like annoying to get like everything right, especially if you don't, I'm not like I said, I came from like other coding languages and I wasn't coding that often, so that kind of stuff is like way harder for me. Like I know what I want it to do and I can tell it how to do it right, but writing it for me is like, huge performance booster.
I mean, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I had trouble whenever I used very obscure libraries. I had trouble using it because it's not aware, or it's just because they have very bad documentations. And then I had to like figure out myself, because whatever the code it was proposing me was actually breaking the system. So I was like, damn, it's like, it highlights the issue. I was like, no, this is not gonna work. So sometimes I think in general AI still works great for like established things, but for very new stuff you still need to have your own eye
Cursor
on it.
is already starting to like solve some of that. So I have so you can like I've had mixed results with it sometimes. Sometimes it works just like magically well. Like, I'll find some like Stack Overflow thing where it's just like, oh, hey, like this is like not well documented, or like, oh, this is like a weird, thing about this particular package. Like it needs it to be a string, even though like everything else is an object. This one thing needs to be a string for some reason. You can like find the Stack Overflow, copy and paste the link, and just put that in your like in Cursor, and it has this like, it'll like index the page, and then it'll say like, given this error in this code block, find like the relevant piece from that Stack Overflow and fix it. That works really well. And then another one for things that are like newer, where there's not as much documentation. So like what I actually have in my Cursor is you can add your own document. So you can reference docs in it. You can say like, hey, use this doc to like write this code, and it has some already built in, but you can add your own. And so like I use ShadCN, for example, like ShadCN UI, their components. And so I like every time I like add a component, I add it as a document, and then I use that for like the formatting. So I'll just like basically put in like at ShadCN/card or something, and then I'll just write like, hey, make this like take the data from this object and generate it as a card. And sometimes like even just that, it's like pretty good at like being like, oh yeah, you're gonna put the name at the top, and then you're gonna put like the body text in the card content. So like handles a lot of that stuff like just out of the box, like well. But if it doesn't, I can also just say like, hey, like I want the title to be this, I want this, and I just like write it in like really short form, really fast, misspellings, just like stream of consciousness, and then it'll just like format something that like 90% of the time is just right out of the box. And I have to go in and just like change a couple things, or like move a variable or change a variable that it decided, and then like go up to the top and do an import or whatever, and then it just works. So yeah.
Wow. Okay, I'm sold. I'm definitely downloading it
today. I think if you're like the joke I've said, if you're a mediocre software engineer, it can get you to be like a pretty good software engineer pretty fast.
Okay, I definitely need that.
I'd say I'm a mediocre software engineer. So for me, I'm like now, like maybe you could hire me at this point, whereas maybe 6 months ago, I wouldn't hire myself. So.
I mean, with all your projects, I don't think you want to go back to work.
No. Right? Yeah, that's the dream. That's the dream. Never go back.
Yeah. That's sweet. So what are your AI predictions from like what you've been working with, for what you've been seeing, and maybe what other people in SF2 were building? Like what do you see like maybe for the next couple of years, predictions for like AI and its role in different aspects of our human life?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I definitely think over the next few years, we're going to see a lot of like AI employee type projects and products, because I think there's a large class of jobs that require like just only a little bit, like there's some jobs that like you just need like a lot of creativity, a lot of like diverse, maybe in person, multimodal problems that I think those are pretty safe. Like it's going to be a while before AI can do those types of things. I mean, I know there are AIs that can generate images and moving images and voice and text, but like those things are getting better fast, but I don't think they're, let's say within 5 years, going to be good enough that like an AI just like can pull and generate and, you know, talk to someone on the phone or hop on a fake video call. And so many jobs require those things, like calling somebody, being on the phone, you know, like just like in-person stuff that you just can't replace yet. But then there's another whole class of jobs which are like the things that tend to get replaced with like automation platforms, right? So one of the reasons I went after like LinkinChat in particular is that I feel like all of these automation platforms, there's like 50% of it is automated, and then 50% of it is like people in other parts of the world usually like handling the edge cases that like you couldn't automate with like a workflow. And I feel like that like those two layers are just like ripe for AI, where you have like certain amount of like, you don't even really need to build a workflow anymore. You can just give like an AI some objectives, some knowledge, and then it can do a lot of those tasks, right? And so I think a lot of like management jobs, like social media management, email management, like those types of things that are all, especially if they're all like virtual, like all text-based and virtual, those are just like super ripe for automation or for AI and automation. So I think you'll see a lot of that in the next few years. There's a lot of people working on that, or like at the beginning stages of working on that, and almost every dimension, like cold emailing, like so like the AE job, right? Or sales, sorry, not AE, sales development role, like that is super ripe for, you know, you just get a really good salesperson, and then they have like 10 AI, you know, they call them sales development representatives, that most of the time they're just like emailing people, right? And they're just booking appointments or something like that. Or like an AI that like warms people up, and then they get this really good closer that call a handful of people every day, right? Like those types of things are really likely, I think. And then I also think it's going to really disrupt a lot of creative industries as well. I mean, that's like probably why I'm interested in the murder mystery. But I even have a friend who's working on like an actual game, and it's all like being made by people, but they chose to go to pay for like a voice that was AI generated, and they like actually like it's licensed and it pays the voice actor whose voice it was made of. And he said they were getting some flack for that because people are like, oh, you know, you're like destroying this job that this person used to like do all this recording. And he was saying, yeah, I kind of agree with him, but it's just like the time it's like such a huge time cost, like not even just the money part, like having to like, they have to like write all the scripts in advance, get it to that person has to record it. If anything's wrong, they have to do it again. If they want to change it, they have to like send it back to that person. So he's like, yeah, we just couldn't do it. We're a small team. He's like self-funding this team himself. And it's like almost like, it's like I mean, I think it's gonna be really successful, but it's like a passion project almost. And so I think you see a lot of people who are like doing these smaller teams. Oh, and I say that's the other big trend in AI. I think you're going to see a lot more small teams being really successful, because so much of the infrastructure you need to start a company or a product, even without AI, has just become like service size. So you can like start a business, get HR, like all of these things like fractionally for like so much cheaper. And then when you like layer AI into that, it's like, oh, well, why would I hire a huge customer service department? What if I can just train an AI bot that's can handle 80% of them, and then the 20% that it can't handle, I just have the engineering team handle because those are probably the ones they need to fix anyways, right? Like, for example, right? Like you just have like your engineers or like your product manager handle the other 20%. So I think that'll be another huge trend is like just the operational elements of running a business being like really AI-ified, and then, but not just businesses, like creators, musicians, like so many elements that they used to have to like, were just really expensive and time consuming. And so I think the outcome will be you just have a lot more creative people doing a lot more creative things because the costs just have like dropped so much. I just think there's some like cool YC company that I was thinking. I actually pitched YC the same idea like a year and a half ago, and they got into the last batch, and they're just like generating songs for people. And it's like, I could write a script for my own song now, and if I got enough stuff together, I could maybe make like a hit song. I don't know how to sing, I don't know how to make music. Like that's pretty cool. I think that's like gonna be such a different world where like anybody can do anything creative as long as they like have the right tools at their disposal.
Yeah, I remember I've seen a Drake song blew up on TikTok, and then people found out it wasn't actually Drake, it was generated, but it was so good that it blew up, and obviously they had to take it down because he probably didn't like it. Somebody already replaced it.
That's what inspired me. So I think what we will have to figure out, I think one of the challenges will be, I think there needs to be some regulation around like using other people's likenesses. Like that to me feels like it's one thing to say like I have a generic voice that sounds good, but when it like, it sounds just like Taylor Swift, I kind of feel like maybe like, but it's interesting because there's like, you could say the flip side, like what if somebody just sounded like Taylor Swift, like happened to sound like, there's maybe actually a good example is like there's a lot of cover artists, right? People who cover other artists and maybe they sound exactly like them. Like, I don't know. Right. And there's no rule against that. So I don't know. I think that's a challenge that we'll have to figure out. And then, the other really big challenge will be like this deep fake problem, right? Like proof that people are a real person is going to be, I think the initial thing people were worried about, I think was, there's going to be like some fake video of the president saying something false. I think those are risky for sure. But the way more problematic ones are these people who are using it even more nefariously to basically defraud people, right? Like, have you seen any of these scams where people are like calling people's family?
I've seen already. Crazy.
To me, like that's the kind of stuff.
Yeah, grandma.
Actually, apparently my grandmother, that already happened to my grandmother for one of my cousins. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I posted about it because I'm like, by the way, like just making sure everybody knows that this is happening. And then my grandmother was like, oh yeah, somebody already did this to us. And I was like, no way. I think. Yeah.
I've seen only recently like a small documentary that in India they shut down this huge scam call center, and it was like a multi-billion operation. They were like pretending to be like a IT company, and on the back end they were just calling and like scamming people. And this YouTuber did the whole series where they like took down with some hackers and some people infiltrating, and they were doing just regular old like on the phone like and now you have AI. I mean, that's like, imagine those people were falling for that. Now with AI, like
I think proof of humanness is going to be like just an absolute requirement of the next like 20 years that someone's gonna have to figure out. I mean, really from now on, but like I think probably within 10 years, if not much sooner, we're gonna have to figure that out because and it's actually interesting. So one of the things that, I feel like everyone's like, oh, crypto could solve this. But what's actually interesting is this has been a problem in crypto for a really long time. And so people in crypto have actually already been thinking about this of like, how do you verify that a wallet holder is like an actual person? Like airdrops is the big problem, like people mining airdrops. I don't know if you ever heard about this, but people
phishing and
phishing.
Have you seen phishing
airdrop? Phishing airdrop, that's just like scam. But so people have been like mining airdrops, and since like they'll create like thousands of wallets for one person, and then they'll each do the like interaction, have bots, and then the point of an airdrop is to give like they want to incentivize like me as Michael Magán to like be excited about it and keep making stuff, like keep using it. And
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, so it's like, so like this is already a problem in that space, and there's a lot of smart people who've been thinking about it. And I think AI is going to be the thing that like pushes it from like the crypto space into the real world's going to have something. And you know, your social security number, or like what, every country has their own version, is like just not good enough for that. Like there's going to be need something that's like, this is Michael Magán, and we're like confident it's him, and it's not just like a random person on the internet impersonating his voice and likeness, trying to get access to his bank account.
Yeah, I could be
Yeah.
fake. Yeah, this all
Yeah,
could be
and this
fake.
would like, in this world, like who cares? Doesn't really matter. But where it does matter is like you're trying to get into your bank account, you know, or something like that. And then it's much more concerning to me than the like, oh, what if somebody made it seem like I said something bad? I mean, that's pretty scary too in this world, but it's even more scary when there's like financial or even like physical risk to people. So
Yeah, I mean, social engineering was already working, and now that multiplied by 100, it's like,
yeah,
like AI would be on the fly, will be able to know exactly what triggers you and like use psychological tricks to make you do the things that you don't necessarily want it to do. Like, I mean, there's already like hypnotists exist. You know, like back home, I remember I knew a person who like susceptible to it, and she got robbed because she was got somehow hypnotized to the point. Oh yeah, to the point where she didn't remember. She just basically let people stole all the apartment stuff, and then came out. Yeah, and like didn't remember anything.
That's crazy.
Imagine AI knowing human psychology to the point and can detect people who are susceptible to it and just target them.
I feel like we're already seeing that a little bit with, you know, there's all these like AI girlfriend apps, and to be clear, actually, I'm not really against people having like AI friends or anything like that. Actually, people have asked me, I'm like, I think I would be totally fine having an AI friend, you know, like, I mean, if they're a good friend, doesn't really matter. I mean, if I think of them as a friend, but yeah, you can see all the problems with that, right? Where it's like, you know, there's somebody who's lonely, and this thing feels like a real person, but just always tells them what they want to hear, and then says, "Hey, could you, you know, oh, I'm going to cost now $300 a month or $1,000 a month," and they are like, "Sure, whatever. I need this like relationship in my life." And people, I mean, this is like,
I mean, sounds like a real girlfriend.
I mean, you know, but I would say like for scammers, like, I mean, it's just like, yeah, the space is just crazy. So I think there's a lot of like risk, but I think, yeah, this is where cool people with products figure out solutions, right? You know, somebody's going to find out a way to like do proof humanness, and you know, maybe we'll have to have some regulations that like limit what people can do with it. But yeah.
I mean, technologies like it just goes so much faster that I think people who regulate it, they're so old, they have no idea even, you know, like well, like some of the parts of the internet is like, sometimes when I see those like even when they were setting regulations on like crypto stuff, and I watch them like question people, or even just technology, even like social media, they have no idea what they're asking. They asking like questions that make absolutely no sense if you're technical, you know, if you know how technology works. So I don't know, that's kind of terrifying.
I think for me, it's
people who have to regulate.
I totally agree. I honestly think the biggest problem, like at this point, I think we're probably talking for the most part about, you know, American politics at this point. I can't speak for other countries, but the average age of politicians in the U.S. has just like gone up a lot. Like I don't know, like I don't know the stats, but I just know based on like history, if you look at like the founding fathers, like for the most part, a lot of them are like really young, like 40s.
They were like 20s. In 20s. Yeah, no, they were in 20s. Founding fathers, like early 20s.
I guess my point is like clearly at that time, right, they were much younger. And I think for a long time, a lot of politicians were fairly young. And then as time went on, they got older. I mean, and honestly, the best example of this is like we have two people running for office in the US that are like, either one, I think, will be the oldest or something like that. Like whoever gets elected will be the oldest person. Or no, that can't be right, but something like that, you know? So... Yeah, I think that's really the big problem in my mind is that, and I have nothing wrong. I think like having people with age and experience is valuable, but when it's like only people with age and experience, you're missing out on like a whole different set of experiences. There's like young people who have like a very, grew up with a completely different set of experiences. I mean, I think about it just now. I was at SF2 and I was the
Hmm.
second oldest person there, like in the program, older than most of the Buildspace team themselves. And like the experiences of the people who were like 10 years younger than me, like they had all these like different views of the world and like different ways of thinking than I did because they just grew up in a different world than I did. And it's like so valuable.
Hmm.
So to me, I think that's a big challenge with just like the American government system in general is that it skews older, it skews to like it's skewed in so many ways, not just older. Um, and yeah, I think the
Hmm.
only way to solve some of the problems in that space is how do we get more people of varied ages and experiences doing these jobs. And the way that it's set up is just never going to happen. Like people
Yeah.
like you and I are not going to stop doing it to go
Well,
stop what we're doing to go do that. So
oh yeah, I mean, there's so much headache
yeah,
with that.
exactly. That's a problem, I think.
There's like very few people want to deal, yeah, with the stress. And I mean, back in the day when they were setting up, I don't think nobody were expecting people will be living until their 80s. I mean, it only speaks to the
Yeah.
success of this experiment where you get to live almost to 80 and still go to work and do stuff.
Yeah.
Like, this is
In
great.
some ways, it's
Great.
super inspiring. I mean, I hope I am working on something exciting until I'm 90, 100. Like at this rate, I mean, hopefully I'll be even older as things go. So, yeah. Also, just like
Hmm.
the types of things. I think what's crazy for me is that if you think about it, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, like there were so few jobs you could do after the age of like 50 or 40
Hmm.
because they were just physical. And yet now, like the most interesting jobs are like almost all mental. And yeah, obviously as you age, there's some like mental degradation, but you probably could do most of these jobs
Hmm.
into your 90s, right? Like maybe at a different level, maybe less time. You can't sit for 8 hours a day, but if you're really good at what you're doing, maybe 4 hours a day is enough. So
Oh yeah, I mean, Warren Buffett is a
yeah,
great example. He's like, all he does is manages multi-billion-dollar company, and he and his partner were doing it. Well, he's like
yeah,
80 something, and he's still like doing pretty well for himself, making a decent amount of money. So yeah, you're
yeah.
absolutely
I think it's
right
a
with
cool
that.
function of the world that we live in. Comparatively to like 100 years ago, right? Whereas like after you got to 50 or now you became like
Hmm.
just a suck on the world. Like you had people to take care of you like by default. Um, or not
Hmm.
50, but there's some age where suddenly like most useful jobs you just couldn't do anymore, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you a question about Buildspace. The
Yep.
almost the last one is, what was like your biggest lesson that you've learned with regard to the project, building it, launching? Like, what was like number one, like the aha moment, and that you implemented and it's like immediately worked?
Yeah. I mean, I would say my biggest lesson was not related to products, which I think is the funny part. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think so. I said it earlier, but I'll just like reiterate it a little bit. It's like I think I never considered this concept of emotional runway. I'd always ever thought about like financial and like how long can you just work on something until you run out of money? And
Mm.
emotional runway, it's like a term that I now think about all the time. It's like the most important thing I think about because it's yeah, I don't know. I didn't go and I probably didn't think about that before going into SF2, and
Hmm.
now that I do, it like has really it's I don't know if it's always changed what I do, but I think about it a lot more. I'm like, oh man, what I'm doing right now is probably not helping that emotional runway. How do I increase that? But in terms of products, I would say the
Mm.
biggest thing I learned was, hmm, I think the biggest thing I would say is just like being around other people who think like not who maybe think differently than you, like they have different skills, things they're better at, but they think about like bringing things into the world. Like they want to create things that other people use and get excited about. And it just like when you're around a lot of people like that, or even just a handful really regularly, you just get so much better. It's like, and that's like so many of the things that I've tried and done. Some of it I like learned from like the Buildspace team. Some of it just like literally things somebody told me like offhandedly in a conversation, like, oh, I'm doing X. And at the time I was like, oh, that doesn't really make sense for me. But now I'm like, oh, I'm going to do that. Like it just comes back to me because like, oh, now that worked for them, or they tried it. Maybe it didn't even work super well for them, but I can see like why it would work, and I could try it myself later. And like that's a real superpower. Like just being around people, having community of people who are doing similar-ish stuff is like hugely like, and like it's got a multiplicative benefit over just like one thing. Like there's every product or anything you're trying to create and bring into the world, there's probably 1,000 different things you're going to have to do at different times for different reasons. And there's never like one thing. But when you're around a bunch of people doing similar stuff in the similar stage, you get like a good sense of what are the different things that you could do for different scenarios at different times. And yeah, so I'd say that for me, that's like the biggest thing I learned. And so like I've made much more of a priority than before, like trying to maintain and develop those types of relationships, because you never know when you're going to need something, and you can just be like, hey, I know you did this, or you built a similar product. I'm having this problem. What do you think? And when you have those people you can just reach out to, and you know that they'll like give you an answer, that's like a superpower. Or you just say, hey, like, let's chat for an hour. I just want to catch up. And you hear them say, oh, you know what? Like, I heard from so-and-so to do this and I tried it and it totally worked. And then you leave that conversation with this like new exciting thing you could try. And those are like the things that I feel like, first of all, like, you know, being in SF2, you just have that experience for 11 weeks all the time. But now that I'm not there, I'm a little bit more focused. I can get a little bit more done. But the thing I've lost and that I am trying to continue to develop is like being able to go into that space, a space like that, and say, hey, here's the things I'm working on. Here are my challenges. And those people have like really cool, interesting insights, or they'll talk about what they're doing and it'll inspire me to think about something differently. Yeah, that's just like the biggest superpower anyone can have.
Wow, it's actually what I liked about the nights and the weekends, and then the IRL especially, when it was like only 3 days, but it was so much fun to meet other people who like, and check out what they're building and ask them questions and see like, you know, what worked for them and like how they did it. It's, I totally agree with that. Like, and what I've just thought about, it'd be cool because you had that experience for like 11 weekends, but I was thinking like maybe the future, you know, with all these AI tools, is that you will have, you know, like we work is kind of freelancing, but it's kind of people working for someone. But I think like it would be cool if you can replicate that type of experience when you have like a place you can go to, like you go to work, but you don't necessarily work, you know, for a company. You work on your stuff, you like building, developing, but you, like you said, you're surrounded constantly with people not doing the same thing, not having the same goals, but they have the same aspiration, motivation, like creating something that is useful to others. So it would be great if you had like something like WeWork, but for, you know, for building, for creatives. Maybe guys from Buildspace can make something like that. Maybe they will hear it, and there's going to be their next.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you say it. So honestly, that's exactly my experience. I went to IRL. I remember calling my wife and being like, wow, this is like almost a life-changing experience. Like, I didn't realize there were this many people who were like me out there. And then when I got, like, I could get to know them and how much energy and excitement it gave me. So like, totally agree. But I was going to add, so yeah, I'm actually like literally everything you described is like, I don't know. I mean, who knows? We'll see. Buildspace is always learning and changing. Maybe they will become that. But I actually am like trying to start something like that in Seattle. A friend of mine has this like garage space that he had for his business that he's not using. But yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Like there needs to be more spaces in the world for people who are wanting to create things in the world. And I think it's interesting is like I obviously before gravitate maybe more people in software, but one of the coolest things about Buildspace was like there were people making physical products, service products, content products, music, like art products. And like I was just as excited about this like their process and experience as I was like people in software, because it's so similar in so many ways. And it brings out parts of you that you wouldn't get if you were just like a bunch of like coders or a bunch of WeWorker peoples who are like contractors or something like that. Like it's like when you just have one group of people together, yeah, I don't know. I think it's important. I think like what I love about Buildspace is the diversity of the types of things people are working on. It really makes the environment different.
Oh yeah, it's like wild from like music to like content to crazy apps. Yeah, I loved it. I loved seeing those like office style shorts that I'm always excited to see a new one.
Josh is amazing. And so like, Josh is like, he makes all the videos and that's his voice too. I joke like he's the voice of the Buildspace Instagram for sure. But yeah, he's amazing. I mean, honestly, super creative, very inspiring.
Yeah, the concept is great, and I like how they always catch them in their like weird pose, and they like look a little bit skittish, and then they present their crazy idea. It's actually, you know what? It speaks to the lesson that you told me, like when you have intro that's not related to the product, and then on a back end they tell a little story, and they hit you with the product. Yeah, actually, because I found myself really like engaged. Like I couldn't wait to see what is this person building. It was like,
and I mean, and like part of it is like, also know your audience, right? So their audience is builders. And so they know like, you're like, oh, this person feels like they could be me. I think that's what I think Josh was trying to elicit of like, they just are this like normal kind of like sometimes like awkward person. And he like really pulled that out in everybody. But like, that's the truth. Like none of us are special. There's nothing like that we have that other people don't have. And that was like, I think the biggest learning I had probably was just like being around so many people who some of them I knew like before just from like Twitter or like about what they're doing. And I like probably built up all these like opinions and thoughts about what they'd be like. And then you get to know them and you're like, oh, they're kind of just like me. There's not that much difference between like the successful people and like the people who are just getting started or haven't had that success yet. And you can just get inspired by it and realize, hey, like if it could happen to them, it could happen to me if I give it enough chances, right? And I think that's like such a cool outcome of like the Buildspace experience is that they kind of create that environment where you feel like anything is possible, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I can wait to see their, I believe season 5, right? They, I hope they're coming up with the season 5. I thought it was going to be earlier, or I thought it was going to be like the previous time. It's going to go to parallel.
I think they thought that too at some point.
But, I think.
But it's going to happen this summer for sure. So, I mean, like I heard them talking about it. It's definitely going to happen. So.
Okay.
Yeah, me
I'm
too.
looking forward to it. Definitely going to join. So. Hey man, it was hour and a half.
Yeah.
So let's how people can find you, and share about like where they can go and check out your stuff.
Right now, best place to find me is Twitter at Mr. Magán _. My Instagram is also at Mr. Magán without the underscore. So I was doing the posting on Instagram a bit. I'll probably get back to posting on Instagram again at some point. But yeah, those are probably the best 2 places. And then get LinkinChat. Get linkin.chat is for the influencer stuff. And then, still working on the domain for murder mystery. So come find me on Twitter and I'm sure it'll be on there at some point.
Great. Thank you again for joining me for this podcast. It was nice. I love talking to other Buildspace people and checking out their stuff and learning what they do. And I think it's kind of what I got to this podcast, what I used to replicate that type of
Yeah.
environment to get to talk to like-minded people. So yeah, I love it. Thank
No,
you for
super
joining
excited.
again. And yeah, you guys subscribe. Yeah, subscribe and push the like and check out his stuff. We're gonna link everything down
All
below.
right. See you later.
And see ya. And